My CEO wife, Sophie, and her male assistant are acting pretty wild together. They're all over the place, from the office to the company rooftop, from the car to outside spots. He calls her Little Greedy Cat, and she calls him Little Teddy. Everyone knows about their fling. Sometimes employees even have to hand them safety supplies during their antics. Still, Sophie thinks I'm clueless. She says, "As long as you're still Noah, I'll never let you go. But I've already switched my name. I've got everything planned out." Mr. Han asked, "Are you sure you want to change your name? Once you do, you'll need to update your school records, documents, and passport." I nodded and said, "Yes, I'm sure." The staff member tried to talk me out of it, saying it's a hassle for adults and my original name is pretty cool too. But I stood firm, signed the name change form, and thanked them. "So you're changing it to Liberty?" the staff asked. "Yeah, liberty, freedom, flying towards the horizon. This is my future. I'm leaving for good," I replied. I asked if I could update my passport now, and they handed me the receipt. I rushed downstairs, updated my passport in no time. But nothing else. No degree certificate, household registration, nothing was changed. Anyway, I was leaving with my new passport in a week, leaving my old identity behind forever. With my new passport, I walked out of the service hall facing H City's landmark building. On its big screen, there was an interview with Sophie, the CEO of Penguin Group. The host noticed her small gestures and laughed, asking, "Mrs. Ma, I see you keep stroking your ring, but it looks like just a simple silver ring. Is there something special about it?" Sophie smiled softly, showed her hand, and said, "This is my wedding ring." The host responded, I thought with your success, your wedding ring would be a big diamond or something." Sophie explained, "I made my wedding ring myself. I polished it bit by bit and engraved both our names inside." "Wow, there are two names, Sophie and," she continued, "Noah, my husband's name." The host said, "Wow, I envy your husband. He must have saved the galaxy in a past life to marry someone like you, Mrs. Ma." Sophie just laughed and said, "You got it backwards. I must have saved the galaxy to marry him." Almost everyone around us was envious, except for me, Noah, who let out a sarcastic laugh. Sophie and I once truly loved each other. From school uniforms to wedding dresses, we spent 15 years together, looking like the perfect couple to our classmates and teachers. But 2 months ago, I got a photo from some random guy. The boy looked like he was in his early 20s, wearing just a small pair of swim trunks. His neck and chest were bruised, clearly having had a rough night. He flashed a V sign at the camera, showing a silver ring on his index finger. Later, I met that boy in Sophie's office. His name was David, freshly graduated at 21, and he was Sophie's new personal assistant. My mind was foggy. I really wanted to rush into Sophie's office and ask, "Does being a personal assistant include night shifts?" But I held back. The bruises on David in that photo said it all. I left amidst everyone's admiration and envy, then headed to a jewelry shop. When I took the ring off my left finger, a sharp pain shot through my heart. The staff asked, "Sir, what kind of jewelry would you like us to make?" "I'll take this ring. Please melt it down," I replied. "But this ring has engravings. It must mean something special. Are you sure you want to melt it?" "Yeah, please do it as soon as you can." Half an hour later, I got home with a beautifully packaged jewelry box. Sophie came home around 10 p.m., holding a bouquet of flowers. "Sorry, Noah. I've been swamped with work and couldn't spend time with you. I brought your favorite potted plant. Like it?" As she got closer, I smelled cigarette smoke on her, and when I turned, there was a small hickey on her neck, red and obvious. I gave a cold laugh. Was she busy with work or busy having fun with David? "Why aren't you saying anything?" she asked. I pushed her away and said, "I'm just a bit tired." "Then let's rest," she suggested. I pushed her away again, saying, "You're tired too. Go take a shower and hit the hay early." Sophie reached out to hold my hand, but then noticed something. "Noah, where's your wedding ring?" I replied, "I took it off." "But this is something I made with my own hands. A proof of our love. Why take it off? I've gained some weight recently, and it doesn't fit anymore. Her expression softened, and she smiled again. Then I'll take it to the jewelry store to resize it. We'll see, I responded. She pointed to a beautiful jewelry box on the table. Noah, is this a gift for me? I nodded. Inside was a small silver block. I had melted our wedding rings and placed them inside. Sophie cheerfully asked, "What day is it today? Did my husband prepare a gift for me?" My heart sank even more. Today is our wedding anniversary. Sophie's face turned pale. She almost begged. Sorry, Noah. I've been so busy with work lately. How about we go out for dinner tonight? I'll make a reservation right now. No need. I've already eaten, I responded. She then suggested a night walk by the river. I'm tired. I want to sleep. Trying to please me, Sophie wrapped her arms around my waist and said, Come on, Noah. It's been so long since we walked together. I feel like you've been distant lately. If this keeps up, I'll think my Noah has lost interest. Had I lost interest? She was the one who had someone else first. She had already drifted away, and this time I'd reclaim my heart forever. On the way out, Sophie chatted and laughed about her recent sightings. I sat in the passenger seat, looking out the window, pretending not to hear. Earlier, when buckling my seatbelt, I'd pulled out a torn stocking from between the seats and shoved it back, acting like nothing happened. Since I'd decided to leave, I didn't want to argue anymore. There was nothing to gain from lies. If I couldn't get anything, I'd just stop wanting it. By the river, Sophie got out of the car and opened the door for me. Noah, we're here, she said. I didn't really want to come, but this riverbank was a spot we used to visit often when we first got together. If this is where it started, then let it end here. Someone nearby commented, Wow, isn't that Ma from TV today? The one who made her own wedding rings? She's so beautiful and gentle, an absolutely perfect wife. Just then, Sophie's phone rang. She looked at me apologetically and said, Sorry, Noah, it's work. Let me take this call. I'll be right back. Go ahead, I replied. Wait for me here. There was a murmur of admiration around us. Someone else said, They're so in love, Mom. I believe in love again. I was the only one standing by the river, face stiff, staring at the glimmering water at night. When Sophie saw the caller ID, the smile on her face was hard to hide, affectionate, sweet, and a bit teasing. How could it be work? But I didn't want to expose her. It was chilly by the river, so I went back to the car to wait. On the car screen, Sophie's social media was still logged in, connected to her phone. The chat history was scrolling by. The person on the other end was called Little Greedy Cat David. Sophie wrote, Miss me. Little Greedy Cat replied, It's a bit lonely at night without you. Sophie responded, Little Greedy Cat, how many times is this not enough? Little Greedy Cat wrote, It's not enough. Every night I start thinking of you. Sophie replied, Fine, wait until tomorrow at the office. I'll satisfy you. Little Greedy Cat wrote, Okay, remember to wear stockings. I like that. The conversation got even dirtier and flirtier. I felt a chill and turned off the screen, trembling. Whether from cold or anger, I wasn't sure. My nails dug into my flesh. Sophie came back about 15 minutes later, placed her hand over her chest, and sighed deeply. I was scared. I turned away, not wanting to see her fake smile anymore. I kept my head down, staring at my hands. It's cold outside, I said, going back to the car. She said, Okay, stay wherever you like. Suddenly, I realized the hidden stockings in the passenger seat. Had they done it there? I felt disgusted and pushed the car door open, throwing up. Sophie was frantic, rushing over to check on me. Noah, what's wrong? I was vomiting uncontrollably. It took me a while to gather myself. Why would Sophie, who loved me so much, cheat on me? Didn't she fear I'd find out? Or did she think she could hide it forever? The evening breeze blew, and my mind cleared a bit. Sophie asked, Are you okay? If you're feeling unwell, I can take you to the hospital. No, I think I just ate something bad at dinner, I replied. Then tomorrow, come to the office and we'll have lunch together, she suggested. I sneered, thinking she was inviting me to watch her and David get it on in the office. Suddenly, I felt like playing a prank. Sure, I'll come with you to the office tomorrow morning, accompany you at work, and we'll have lunch together. Then we'll go home together at night. Sophie didn't expect me to agree. Her expression became hesitant. But I've been really busy lately. I might not be able to stay with you the whole time. You do your work, and I'll wait for you in your office. Okay then, back at home, I said. Sophie offered to draw me a bath. She went into the bathroom, but strangely closed the door. I went downstairs, got back in the car, and started the engine. The screen showed Sophie's latest chat log. She had written, "The situation has changed. We can't meet at the office tomorrow." Little Greedy Cat replied, "I'm a bit disappointed." Sophie responded, "Don't be disappointed, little pervert. Tomorrow we'll do it on the rooftop. Even more exciting." Little Greedy Cat wrote, "Yay." When I returned to the bedroom, Sophie had just come out of the bathroom. "Noah, the bathwater's ready. You should soak for a bit." "No, I want to rest," I replied. She said, "Okay, then sleep if you're tired. By the way, can I open that gift you left on the table now?" "Open it in a week," I answered. "Why wait a week? I want to see what gift our Noah has prepared for me," she thought. "Because in a week, I'll be gone forever." I didn't say that. Instead, I said, "Because in a week, this gift will have meaning." Sophie kissed me lightly on the lips and said, "Okay, I'll listen to you." The next morning, Sophie's phone started ringing around 6 a.m. She declined the call, then turned to hold me, saying, "Let's ignore them and sleep a bit more." But the phone kept ringing insistently. Sophie frowned and said irritably, "It's not even working hours. Why are they calling me so early? This useless group of execs needs to be fired soon." She turned off the phone again. When it rang the third time, Sophie angrily got out of bed. "Honey, you sleep a little longer. I'll check what urgent stuff they have for me." I murmured. I turned over, my back facing her. Sophie left the bedroom with the phone. Soon, I saw her outside the front door with a delivery man in yellow handing her a package. She took it, but came back with empty hands. "Is something serious going on at the company?" I asked. "It's fine, honey. Don't worry. Just rest. I'll make you breakfast." Not sure if it was guilt or genuine concern, Sophie made an extravagant breakfast. Milk, eggs, bread, jam, and my favorite oatmeal. "From now on, no more junk food. I'll hire someone to cook for you every day." "No need," I replied. "Be good, honey. You have to listen to me, or I won't feel it's working," I responded. "Sophie, can I ask you something?" "Sure, ask away." "Do you believe in the 7-year itch?" She showed a look of disgust. "That's just an excuse for other women to cheat. I'm different. I'll only love our Noah in this lifetime." I chuckled. "You'll love only me your whole life." "Yes," she replied. "What if you fall for another man?" "Let me be struck by 5 lightning bolts and die miserably." I laughed sarcastically. Such a heavy oath. "Aren't you afraid it'll come true?" "I'm telling the truth. Why should I be afraid?" I picked up my knife and fork, spreading jam on my bread. "Honey, you have to trust me." "Let's eat," she insisted. "You still don't trust me. Do I need to cut open my heart for you to believe me?" "There are still people waiting for you at the company. Don't be late." Sophie finally relaxed, sitting across from me. "Let them wait longer. A bunch of useless people. I'll fire them soon enough." "Fire him," I said. "Would you really do that? Him, not them." I wasn't sure if Sophie heard me, but she replied, "Except for you, I have nothing I'd hesitate to give up." After breakfast, we headed to the company together. I couldn't stand sitting in the front seat, so I insisted on the back. "I get motion sickness. The back seat's more comfortable and I can get some fresh air." Sophie didn't push back. "All right, I'll try to drive smoother." At the company entrance, Sophie jogged over to open the car door for me. As I got out, employees surrounded me during rush hour. A few executives even jogged over, flattered. "Mr. Han is here." Miss Ma mentioned you love coffee. I'll get some for you right away. Another one said, I'll get some Japanese food. Miss Ma loves Japanese food the most. Sophie laughed. You all better stop feeding him. My husband's getting a bit chubby. His wedding ring doesn't fit anymore. That's not true. Miss Ma, he's getting a bit chubby. His wedding ring doesn't fit anymore. Not true. He looks slim to me. It must have shrunk. Keep flattering me, but this is too obvious. Silver doesn't shrink. You don't understand. Miss Ma loves Mr. Han so much. As long as he's happy, she's happy. Aren't we all living the good life because of it? Sophie smiled sweetly. All right. You found my soft spot. Everyone laughed. I was almost escorted into Sophie's office by the crowd. Fruits, snacks, coffee, everything available. Sophie found me a football match on her computer and said, Honey, I have to go get busy. You stay here and relax. If you need anything, just call George outside. I purposely asked, Where's your assistant, David? I didn't see him today. I don't know. I'll have HR call him later. Before leaving, Sophie lovingly ruffled my hair and whispered, Wait for me to come back. We'll have lunch together. The executives left too, but I noticed her phone was left on the desk. I hurried outside and overheard the executives talking. They're getting bolder on the rooftop. What can we do? Mr. Han is here today, so we have to change the location. Are we still supposed to deliver condoms to Miss Ma today? No need. I saw her pocketing several boxes when she went up earlier. Ha ha, Miss Ma's impressive. Buying condoms right under her husband's nose. Just call a courier. It's so convenient now. They can buy anything. I suddenly understood. The persistent calls this morning were from the courier. She had ordered condoms early, preparing for the rooftop meeting today. They continued chatting. I wonder if a few boxes will be enough. Last time, Miss Ma and David spent a whole day and night in the car. If they run out, just send more. We have to serve our boss well. Weren't you just saying we should serve Mr. Han well? What does he understand? A cup of coffee can win him over someone like Miss Ma. With her status, doesn't everyone have a few puppies on the side? It's normal, as long as her husband doesn't find out. He looks so honest. It shouldn't be hard to hide it from him. Just then, Sophie appeared. Don't talk nonsense in front of my husband. Got it, Miss Ma. We understand. One asked, Miss Ma, why did you bring Mr. Han today? You and David still have to hide on the rooftop. We have to be careful around him. Sophie glared and said, Noah is my husband. If he wants to come, he can come. No need for you to comment on it. Yes, Miss Ma. We understand. Another added, Take good care of Noah. He had a bad stomach yesterday. Don't let him eat anything cold or raw. And if anyone talks about me and David, I'll have them pack up and leave immediately. The executives nodded with forced smiles. I didn't catch the rest. I quickly went back to Sophie's office and placed her phone among the snacks. After a while, Sophie returned, still the same gentle Sophie. Little glutton, why are you eating so happily? The words made me feel disgusted. I fought the discomfort and asked, Weren't you going to a meeting? Why are you back already? She said, I left my phone here. Did you see it? I shook my head. Sophie rummaged through the snacks and found the phone. So it was hidden in the snacks. Well, enjoy your snacks. I'm heading out now. Ding, ding, ding. My phone rang. I picked it up. The other person said, Hello, is this Mr. Liberty? Yes, this is he. Mr. Xiang, your flight to Norway, scheduled for a week from now, has been successfully booked. Just bring your passport when you board. Do I need to bring any other documents? No, just the passport will be fine. Okay, I hung up. Sophie, puzzled, asked, Passport, honey? What do you need a passport for? I said, It's a friend of mine. He lost his passport and asked me how to replace it. Sophie took a couple of quick steps and hugged me tightly, saying, You scared me. I thought you were going abroad without me. I turned my head and vomited again. She smelled strongly of a sweet, fishy scent mixed with sweat and a man's cigarette smoke. Sophie gently patted my back. What did they feed you? I specifically told them to take care of your stomach these past few days. You wait here. I'll go fire them all. I pushed her away with all my strength. Fire whoever you want. Just stop using me as an excuse. Sophie was taken aback by my sudden outburst. Honey, are you mad at me? I've been busy with work and didn't spend time with you today. She said, Then how about this? Tomorrow I'll cancel all my work and just spend the day with you. Is that all right? I laughed bitterly. Just spend the day with me? Yes, just you and me. I took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. I hope you keep your word. That night, out of nowhere, it started pouring rain. Since I got home, I'd been vomiting nonstop. Sophie wanted to come near me, but I harshly rejected her. Don't come near me. The smell on you makes me want to puke even more. She sniffed her sleeve. Maybe it's the perfume you don't like. I'll switch to a different scent next time. I should know it's not the perfume's the problem, I said. All right, don't be mad. I won't wear any perfume from now on. Is that better? I splashed cold water on my face, stared at my reflection in the mirror, and outside the bathroom, Sophie was anxiously holding a pot of hot water. I couldn't understand why, even with the strong, sweet scent of intimacy on her, she still acted so seriously like she loved me. I couldn't grasp why Sophie seemed to care about me but still betrayed our relationship without hesitation. The execs were right. People with money and power always play around, thinking they could fool me. But they were wrong about me. I wasn't so easily fooled. I hadn't given up my principles. If her love wasn't wholehearted, then I didn't want any of it. The next morning, Sophie took me to the hospital. After tests, the doctor concluded it was likely emotional gastritis. Sophie asked, What's emotional gastritis? It's when you've been under a lot of emotional stress, affecting your body, causing digestive problems and vomiting. She asked, Noah, have you been upset about something recently? If you want to talk, maybe I can help. I turned my face away, avoiding her closeness. You can't solve it. Come on, tell me. There's hardly anything I can't fix. Well, actually, this was something only she could fix. For a moment, I thought about asking her if David and I were kidnapped, who she'd save first. But then I realized, I know martial arts. I can save myself. I don't need Sophie anymore. In Norway, I'd applied to an art school under the name Liberty. I had given up my painting dream to marry Sophie, but now I'd live for myself. Sophie said, Honey, how about I take you to see a movie this afternoon? There's a comedy that'll make you happy. I asked, In the afternoon, don't you have work? She replied, Didn't we agree? I'm spending the whole day with you today. I laughed. I keep my promises. I'll never go back on my word. Her phone rang. She was about to reject the call but paused when she saw the caller ID. I watched her expression change from irritation to hesitation. I laughed. Answer it. Company matters are important. Sophie said, I'll be quick. Just give me 5 minutes. She stood up to leave, but I stopped her. Answer it here. I don't understand your company's matters. Don't worry about me spilling anything. Sophie hesitated, then awkwardly stopped, and after 2 seconds, answered the call. Frowning, she said, I told you not to call me today. What's the matter? And I could faintly hear a man complaining on the other end. Sophie spoke cautiously. All right, I understand. Wait a moment. She hung up and apologized, saying, Noah, there's an important document at the company I need to sign. The manager has already brought it to the hospital and is downstairs. I'll sign it and be back in half an hour. I nodded. Sophie practically ran out of the consultation room. The doctor smiled and said, Mr. Han, Miss Ma really loves you. She even put her work aside for you. I forced a smile. Sorry, doctor. I need to use the restroom. As I left the consultation room, I saw Sophie rushing downstairs, not waiting for the elevator. She went to the obstetrics and gynecology department. My phone vibrated with a message from David. Mr. Han, I'm so sorry. She probably won't be able to accompany you today. I opened the image David sent. It was her ultrasound report. I zoomed in and saw the first line. Embryo at 8 weeks. Signs of a threatened miscarriage. David taunted, We spent the whole day on the rooftop yesterday, trying all kinds of positions. I guess we went too rough. The baby's showing signs of a threatened miscarriage. Well, it's her fault. She was bored with the usual routine at home, but when she's with me, she wants something more exciting. David continued, I'm concerned about her health. I've asked her to come down for a checkup. After all, compared to gastritis, the baby's more important, don't you think? I left the hospital by myself in a taxi and went to a law firm. Hello, I'd like to hire your firm to draft a divorce agreement. I didn't ask for anything specific, and the lawyer was efficient. Half an hour later, I had the full divorce agreement. The lawyer said, You don't need the wife's signature. Once you've been separated for 2 years, this agreement will automatically take effect. When I came out with the divorce agreement, Sophie called me. Honey, where are you? I can't find you anywhere in the hospital. I waited for you, but when I couldn't find you, I just went home. Good, as long as you're home safe. I'm sorry, there's something at the company I need to take care of. I'll be going on a business trip soon, so you'll have to take care of yourself at home. But next week, I'll cancel everything and spend the whole week with you. I sighed deeply. Lies can be repeated 1,000 times, but no 1 week with you. I no longer had any emotional reaction. Okay, go ahead, she said. Our Noah is so thoughtful. I love you. I asked, Love me, Sophie? Do you just like men who play games? Am I too boring for you? Sophie froze for a moment and said, Of course not. I like you just the way you are. I like you just the way you are, she repeated. I asked, Sophie, would you fall in love with another man? Of course not, she said. I replied, If you change your heart, I'll leave you forever. Sophie chuckled. Go ahead and run. I can lock down the airports and train stations. As long as you're still called Noah, I'll never let you leave me. I smiled and thought, but on my passport, I'm not Noah anymore. I'm Liberty. I'm serious. I have ways to leave you and make sure you can never find me. Sophie kept laughing like she was teasing a dog. All right, run if you can. I'll give you 3 days and then I'll come find you. I told you, as long as you're still called Noah, I can find you anywhere. You won't be able to escape me. Escape, I laughed. Let's see if she's right. There were 3 days left before my flight. David sent me a picture of Sophie at a beach barbecue. He wrote, To celebrate our close love, we're vacationing in the Maldives. I didn't reply. They had gathered a few close friends for a final gathering, maybe the last time they'd meet. I enjoyed the gathering. 2 days before the flight, David sent another picture of Sophie reading a book titled The Baby's Early Education Guide *. He wrote, New moms are really focused on their baby's education. She's already researching early childhood education. I still didn't reply. I went to the bank, exchanged all my money for euros and cash, and canceled all my bank cards a day before the flight. This time, David sent a video showing a beautiful fireworks display over the sea. He wrote, She rented out the entire island and bought all the fireworks in the Maldives just for my birthday. So today was David's birthday too, making it double the joy for them. After watching, I only smiled faintly, then called a local charity. Hello, I have a batch of clothes I'd like to donate to impoverished mountain regions. A representative arrived, and during the days Sophie was away, I had already packed everything up, 5 large bags of clothes and shoes. I donated them all, leaving nothing behind. My ID, household registration, diploma, and other documents were all gone, along with my daily belongings. I took everything straight to the crematorium, gave the staff some money, and asked them to burn everything. Standing in the house I'd lived in for 5 years, I felt a bit unfamiliar. The house was spotless. There wasn't a trace of me left. I only had a backpack with my passport. If any old stuff was left, it was my phone. I called a taxi with my phone and headed to the airport. The driver stopped at the terminal entrance, and just as I was about to pay, I got a call from Sophie. Noah, I'm back from my business trip. I'll come pick you up and we can go out to eat. She was back, and David was with her. I sat in the car and watched them both walk out of the terminal. David was pushing a luggage cart with 2 suitcases, one blue and one pink, matching couple luggage. Sophie was clinging to his arm, leaning on his shoulder, looking like a loving married couple. On the phone, I asked, "Was the business trip tiring?" She replied, "It's all right, not too tiring. By the way, I remember you said I could open the gift you gave me today, right?" "Yes," she said. "I'm really excited. I've been guessing what you might get me all week. For our anniversary. It must be something meaningful, right?" "Yes, very meaningful. You'll see when you open it." "All right, I'll be home in about 2 hours." 2 hours would be enough by then. My plane should have already crossed the border, I said. "Okay," she replied. "I'll see you soon. Love you, Noah." I hung up, and David frowned in displeasure. Sophie stood on her tiptoes and kissed him on the lips to comfort him. The driver reminded me, "Sir, you haven't paid yet." I scanned the payment QR code and transferred all the money in my WeChat account to him. The driver looked startled. "Sir, you entered the wrong amount. It's 130 wen, not 13,000. Let me refund you." "No need, I won't need it anymore. Thank you for bringing me here. It's my job, and you've paid the fare, so I had to bring you here." "That's different. You brought me here, to the rebirth road of my future." I got out of the car, turned off my phone, took out the SIM card, and casually threw it in the trash can. Then I gave the phone to a young child nearby. The child happily said, "Thank you, big brother." I smiled and patted her on the head, saying, "You're welcome." The child's mother felt awkward and said, "Such an expensive item, we can't accept it." I asked, "Are you going abroad?" "Yes, we're going to Africa to find her father." I smiled and said, "Then take it. You might need it in Africa." She said, "All right, thank you." I waved goodbye to them, safe travels. The broadcast announced, "Liberty, please make your way to gate H23 for boarding. Flight is about to depart." I held my passport tightly, took one last look back, and walked resolutely toward the gate. Sophie hung up the phone, seemingly unaware of any changes. But David wasn't happy. "The days when you belong to only me are coming soon. After that, we'll have to hide and sneak around again." Upon hearing this, Sophie gave him a slight warning tone and replied, "Don't let me sense anything unusual, or you know the consequences." David sighed. "Fine, fine, I know. You've said it 100 times already." Seeing he was more upset, she lowered her head and tried to comfort him. "All right, I won't say it again." David shook his head. "You need to make it up to me." Sophie replied, "I'll apologize. How about I buy you a pair of sneakers? Which ones do you like?" David raised his head. "Let's go back to the company before you go home. Let's do it one more time." Sophie hesitated slightly. "I already told Noah I'll be home in 2 hours. There won't be enough time. You could just say there was traffic on the way. After all, the airport highway is always congested." Sophie glanced at the time, still unsure. David then pulled her in and kissed her lips. At first, Sophie pushed him away, but soon embraced him after a passionate kiss. She whispered with a teasing laugh, "Little glutton." David smiled and said, "Let's go back to the company just for one last crazy time." Sophie didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed his hand and headed for the parking garage. David chuckled, and Sophie replied, "Forget it in the car." They had a playful moment before heading back to the company, spending another 2 hours in madness. When it was finally over, Sophie tried to call me. "The phone you're trying to reach is turned off." Sophie felt something was wrong. I never turn off my phone. David happened to bring her a cup of coffee and, without hesitation, pulled her into his arms. "Why are you in such a rush? It's just that your phone ran out of battery." Trying to please her, he added, "I made the coffee for you. Do you want me to feed it to you?" Though life seemed the same as before, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. At first, she couldn't pinpoint it, but soon she felt something was missing, and even the temperature of the coffee was a bit off. Frowning, she stood up and said, "Forget it. Bring me a cup of hot tea instead." David leaned in again and asked, "What's the matter? Do you want to change the flavor?" The word made Sophie uncomfortable. She lowered her voice. "Stop it. I'm not in the mood right now." David replied, You're just overreacting. He's at home by himself. What could happen? This time, Sophie got a bit upset. Go and change it. Don't make me repeat myself. David didn't say anything else and immediately went to do as she asked. He acted like a gentle, obedient puppy, always doing what she wanted without arguing. When the assistant came in with the schedule, they were just as meek and didn't dare make a sound. He said, "Ma, you have a meeting this afternoon and it's almost time." Sophie had originally planned to go home, have dinner with me, then return to the company to work. The timing was perfect. But now, most of the time was spent fooling around with David, and with the meeting about to start, she didn't have time to go home anymore. She glanced at the work schedule and, without lifting her head, asked, "How much longer until the afternoon meeting?" The assistant quickly calculated the time and reported, "About an hour." Sophie stood up and said, "I need to go home for a while. If the meeting has already started by the time I get back, don't wait for me. Just proceed as usual." She didn't explain why. She simply picked up her car keys and walked out without calling the driver. This caused David to feel urgent. He hurried over to the office door and blocked her way, saying, "Aren't I here with you? Why do you need to go see another man?" Sophie wasn't in the mood for idle talk and pushed his hand away. "Don't say such things again." David, displeased, said, "No, I don't want to share you with anyone else." The assistant, the most nervous person in the room, looked around frantically, wishing they could just jump out the window. It was the 40th floor, after all, but at least it would be over. Sophie turned her gaze to David, her expression serious and stern. "I've told you from the beginning to understand your position. Noah is my husband, and that will never change." David fell silent, frustrated but unwilling to speak up. He knew that both the title of husband and Sophie's wealth would eventually be his. But you know what they say, haste makes waste. So he decided to hang tight for the time being, even though he wasn't thrilled about it. Sophie hadn't been home during the day for quite a while. As she walked into the familiar villa, a weird mix of familiarity and something fresh hit her. Maybe the saying, "absence makes the heart grow fonder," was spot on this time. "Noah, I'm back," she called out cheerfully, strolling through the yard and into the living room. The yard's flowers and plants were perfectly trimmed, and the inside was just as pristine and elegant as always, showcasing the owner's taste and style. Sophie felt proud of herself and wanted to hug Noah, saying, "You've been working hard, darling." But as she glanced around, Noah was nowhere to be seen. She turned to the housekeeper. "Where's Mr. Hahn? Has he stepped out? He should be home by now." The maids exchanged looks, unable to answer. "We haven't seen him this morning," they said. Sophie frowned. "You don't even know if he had breakfast?" No one responded. Internally, they probably thought, "Shouldn't his wife know where he is? What are you asking us for?" Sophie sensed the tension in the air. She dropped her hands, finding no answers, and decided to take matters into her own hands. "Forget it. No use asking you. I'll find him myself." She figured he was probably still asleep, like back in their student days. So she quietly crept upstairs, but he was still missing. The bedroom looked just like she remembered, but there was no sign of Noah. The windows and curtains were open, sunlight flooding the room and making it feel warm and cozy. But in this peaceful setting, the one person who should have been there was gone. Noah was missing. Sophie walked over to the vanity and spotted a letter tucked under a box. It was from Noah. The last 2 lines he'd written for her. "I know everything about you and David. I'm leaving. Don't look for me." No signature. That was how their years together ended, quietly and coldly. She had no clue. Noah had run out of things to say to her. Sophie immediately tried calling him, but he didn't pick up. Her fingers gripped the letter, crumpling its edges without realizing it. She kept dialing, pressing the call button repeatedly, searching every corner of the house, refusing to give up. Whether she checked the garden where Noah liked to tend his flowers or the rooftop swing where he used to watch the stars, there was no sign of him. The call kept saying, "Sorry, the number you're trying to reach is unavailable." After hearing it so many times, Reality started to hit. Noah wasn't going to answer her calls. She needed another plan. Stay calm, she kept telling herself. Sophie slapped her face a few times to snap out of her panic. Finally, she opened her contacts and started calling mutual friends. They had been the perfect couple, going from school uniforms to wedding dresses. They knew each other's lives and social circles inside out. Sophie called one of Noah's friends first. At first, no one answered, but on the third try, someone reluctantly picked up. Hearing her reason, the friend laughed coldly and said, "You're his wife? If you can't even find him, why do you think I would know?" Then, they hung up immediately. Sophie didn't have time to dwell on her friend's rude response. She quickly moved on to call another friend, but it was the same story. The others had their own criticisms of her, though they didn't say it outright. Their interactions with Sophie had been strained in recent years, but she still refused to give up. She dialed the last of their old classmates, asking if Noah had contacted anyone recently. If he was really leaving, he must have talked to someone. The classmates seemed to think it was a joke. "You're his closest person, his pillow partner. If you didn't notice any signs, why would anyone else know? Maybe think about the arguments you've had recently." Sophie fell silent. It had been a long time since they'd properly talked. If they still had arguments, maybe Noah wouldn't have left. She hung up the last call, feeling more panicked. The bedroom, like every other room, was unchanged, but all of Noah's things were gone. The more Sophie thought about it, the more anxious she got. She feared Noah had acted on impulse, maybe staying in a hotel, or worse, he might have forgotten something important in the rush of leaving or ran out of money. In a panic, she logged into her bank account to send him money. She didn't even check the amount, just typing in a few zeros, worried he might be in trouble. What she didn't know was that Noah never needed her financial support. Soon, she got a call from customer service. "Miss Ma, the transfer you attempted has failed." Sophie, already on the brink, lost her composure. "Was there a problem with the transfer limits or the number of transactions? I can prove it was me. Give me the verification code and signature. I need to send money to my husband." She couldn't remember the last time she personally transferred money to Noah. It felt like ages since she had handled those mundane daily details, with their wedding anniversary managed by an event planner, gifts bought by assistants, and household expenses automatically deducted. These small things had piled up, and without meaning to, Sophie and Noah had drifted apart. The regret hit her hard, and she wanted to make things right, but the bank representative said, "Miss Ma, there's no issue on your end, but the account you're trying to transfer to no longer exists." "Why? The card was canceled yesterday." Sophie repeated her question in disbelief, and after confirmation, she hung up, exhausted. She put her hand to her face and sobbed. If only she had called me once in the past few days, she would have noticed something was wrong. But she hadn't. Now it was too late. An hour passed, but Sophie couldn't focus on work anymore. She frantically searched through Noah's social media accounts, hoping to find a trace of him. Maybe he had shared something online under an alias. Sophie didn't use social media much, but she remembered Noah's account name, Big Orange. She first opened WeChat and saw their chat history had stopped days ago, frozen on a past day. His account was deactivated. Where his profile picture used to be was now just a gray default avatar, a punch to her chest. She searched for Big Orange on other platforms, but the result was the same. The user no longer existed or had been taken over by someone else. She spent hours scrolling, searching tirelessly. Eventually, she found only a few scattered posts with Noah's messages. The Big Orange ID had vanished completely. Unwilling to give up, Sophie called the platform's customer service, providing Noah's details. "I've read your platform's rules. A deactivated account can be reactivated within 7 days. I need to recover his data." The representative refused, saying, "Sorry, but only the account holder can reactivate it." Sophie argued, "I'm his wife. Can't I reactivate it on his behalf?" "Sorry, ma'am," came the polite reply. Frustrated, Sophie threatened to file a complaint and involve the court. "Don't think I don't know you have access to this info. It can't be that hard to restore the account data." The representative remained calm. Feel free to do so. Used to dealing with difficult customers, the representative wasn't shaken by her threats. Knowing any legal process would take time, Sophie felt defeated and hung up the phone. She quickly reached out to a contact at the platform, asking for help in a more measured tone. I understand your policy, but my husband is missing. Before he disappeared, he took nothing with him, not even his social media accounts or bank card. If you can't help me recover his data, I'll have no leads left. Please, I'm begging you. Sophie rarely humbled herself, but she had no choice. Luckily, after confirming Noah was missing, the platform's rep agreed to help. She finally accessed Noah's social media account. His profile picture was a painting he'd done, exuding a quiet, serene vibe that matched his username and the account's overall feel. Noah wasn't very talkative, but he had documented their life online over the years. He was one of the first users of the platform, and his earliest post was soon after they started dating. We're together. The outdated emoticons made Sophie smile softly at the sweet memory of their first love. Noah enjoyed sharing snippets of his life on that account. Sketches, gifts Sophie had given him, wedding photos, and pictures of the garden they'd cultivated together after marriage. Sophie scrolled through, her heart softening with each post, as if pieces of her were crumbling away. But as she kept reminiscing, she noticed Noah hadn't posted anything new for a long time. The most recent post was 6 months ago, a photo of the starry sky from the rooftop swing. She tried to recall what had happened around then, and it clicked. This was when she'd started her affair with David. Now, she thought she was being discreet, but there had been signs all along, little details that had betrayed her. Intense regret washed over Sophie. With trembling hands, she clicked on Noah's last text post. It was sent late the previous night and was extremely brief. This is the end. There were no hidden hints, but Sophie instinctively knew the message was for her. A final statement closing the chapter on everything they had shared. She spent the entire day in a daze. As night fell, the once warm and familiar home felt cold and alien. Alone in bed, engulfed by a crushing emptiness unlike anything she'd felt before, Sophie's phone buzzed several times by her pillow. David was texting, trying to get her to go out, but she didn't even glance at his messages. She lay sleepless until well past midnight. Finally, unable to sleep, she turned on the bedside lamp and moved to where Noah used to lie, wanting to feel his warmth even for a moment. At least I should have been here last night, right? She thought, trying to recall the last time they shared a bed. The emptiness in her chest felt colder than the sheets. The silk bedding was smooth, but took longer to warm up compared to the cotton sheets they'd once shared. Years ago, when they were newly graduated and couldn't afford luxury, they'd cuddle for warmth every night before sleep. Now she missed Noah desperately. Her heart ached like someone was squeezing it tight. Just then, the alarm clock rang sharply at midnight, pulling her out of her thoughts. Sophie couldn't lie there any longer. She suddenly remembered the small box Noah had left for her, the one with beautiful jewelry inside. She quickly grabbed it from the vanity. The box was small, fitting comfortably in her hand. But when she opened it, instead of fine jewelry, she found a small, oddly shaped silver block. At first, Sophie didn't get it. Why had Noah given her this? Her hand instinctively touched her silver wedding band on her left ring finger, the one she'd made for him herself. Then it hit her like lightning. The small silver block was Noah's wedding ring. He'd melted down their wedding bands. The grief was overwhelming. She finally understood the truth. This wasn't about Noah running away in anger or acting out. He was never coming back. Sophie was too distraught to care about her upcoming birthday. In the middle of the night, she drove straight to the police station, breathless and frantic. I need to file a report. My husband is missing. He might have harmed himself, she gasped. Noah was an adult, free to come and go as he pleased, so she had to come up with a convincing reason for the police to investigate. Otherwise, they'd dismiss her claim. The police took her report seriously and agreed to help search, accompanying her until dawn but finding nothing. A male officer asked, Have you and your husband had any recent conflicts? Sophie hesitated before answering. No, our relationship has always been good. The experienced officer sensed she was hiding something and warned her, if you truly want to find your husband, you need to tell us everything. Otherwise, we can't help. Blushing deeply, Sophie finally confessed, I've been seeing someone else. I think he found out about it. This should have showcased her charm, but in that moment, Sophie realized how humiliating her actions had been, especially since it was the reason Noah left her. The officer asked bluntly, So your husband left because you cheated on him? Sophie remained silent, her face twisting with guilt as she nodded. Luckily, a sudden phone call saved her from further questioning. Hoping it was Noah reaching out, she quickly answered. It was a man introducing himself as a lawyer from a law firm. May I speak with Miss Sophie Ma? I'm the attorney hired by Mr. Han, and he wishes to meet with you. Are you available? Of course, I'll be there right away. Sophie didn't explain herself to the police. She quickly made up an excuse about other matters and rushed out of the station, focused solely on meeting the lawyer and convincing Noah to come back. She sped through countless red lights, ignoring angry shouts from pedestrians. But she didn't care until the lawyer handed her a divorce agreement. Sophie didn't notice the document right away. She looked around the office, anxiety clear on her face. Where's Noah? Isn't he willing to see me? Tell him to come out. I have something to say to him. The lawyer calmly responded, I'm afraid I can't do that. Mr. Han isn't here. He has fully entrusted our firm to handle the divorce proceedings. If you have any objections, you may tell me directly. He lifted the divorce agreement slightly, and only then did she notice it. Her face went pale as she took the document. She barely glanced at it before tearing it into pieces, flinging the scraps around the office. I will never divorce him. Her eyes reddened as she insisted. I made a mistake, but who doesn't? I know I was wrong, and as long as he doesn't like the people I've been with, I'll avoid them. This should be enough. Still naively believing that Noah, who had always loved her, would come back if they just talked, Sophie tried to change tactics. The lawyer smiled faintly and reminded her, Miss Ma, now that you acknowledge your mistake, you must also be aware that divorce doesn't only happen through mutual agreement. There's also divorce by court judgment. Mr. Han said that if you disagree, he will instruct me to file for a lawsuit. Sophie, her voice shaking, asked, He didn't even try to tell me this in person. She stared at the lawyer, trying to spot any sign of deception. The lawyer remained polite. Mr. Han said he didn't want to see you. Anything he needed to say has been left in the letter. Sophie let out a bitter laugh. That's what he calls a letter? He only left me 2 sentences. Well, I'm not signing it. I've already torn up the divorce agreement, and I want to see him in person. Her heart ached as if something important had been ripped from her chest. The lawyer had expected this reaction. When she calmed down a bit, he opened his folder and pulled out another divorce agreement. Mr. Han anticipated you would tear up the first one. That's why he asked us to prepare 2 copies. Sophie's fury exploded. She snatched the paper and was about to tear it up again. The lawyer smiled politely and said, Miss Ma, feel free to tear as many as you want. The original has been reviewed by Mr. Han himself. We can print more if needed. Drained of all energy, Sophie felt immediately deflated. She switched tactics instantly, her voice softening as she pleaded, I'm sorry, I was wrong before. Can you at least tell me where he is? The lawyer's demeanor remained unchanged. Sorry, Miss Ma, I don't know. His implication was clear. He had no intention of letting her see Noah, not even one last time. Sophie's tone became more polite, almost pleading. How about this? If you tell me Noah's whereabouts, I'll pay you. 1,000? No, 50 million. The lawyer remained unfazed. Miss Ma, I cannot disclose information that Mr. Han does not wish to share. This is just a case. 50 million would be enough for you to open your own firm or even retire comfortably without needing partners. This is a very lucrative deal. Sophie tried to bribe him, but the lawyer stayed firm. Miss Ma, of course, I'd love to become rich overnight, but I'd rather earn that money through the firm. Besides, I genuinely don't know where Mr. Han is. After he entrusted everything to us, he only contacted me by phone. Sophie held on to her last shred of hope. Give me the phone number he's using now. I'll pay. The lawyer responded smoothly. He's still using his old number. I called him earlier today, but there was no answer. The conversation ended as the room grew unbearably cold. Seeing that the lawyer wasn't budging, Sophie grew serious and reaffirmed her stance. Then we have nothing more to discuss. No matter how many copies you print, I will never sign. As for a lawsuit, do as you wish. She refused to believe Noah wouldn't show up in court. Determined to earn his forgiveness, she believed that with so many shared memories, if she just held on, he'd come around. The lawyer had anticipated her reaction and calmly explained the law. Miss Ma, actually, Mr. Han doesn't need to sue you. That's a last resort. If possible, he'd prefer an amicable separation. For example, after 2 years of separation, he can file for divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences. I had already thought this through. Sophie was stunned. That's impossible. He wouldn't be so heartless. We loved each other so much. Is he really going to deny me over one mistake? She conveniently forgot about everything she'd done over the past months, including neglecting Noah. The lawyer wasn't concerned about her feelings. Miss Ma, your personal opinion doesn't change the law. If you think it's unfair, you can always sue the law itself. Stubborn as ever, Sophie insisted. So if I find Noah during this time and make up with him, that'll solve everything. The lawyer smiled but said nothing, knowing her efforts were futile. Just as Sophie was at an impasse with the lawyer, her phone rang. It was the police. Miss Ma, based on the information you gave us, we've pinpointed the last location of Mr. Han's phone signal. Can you come here? I'll be there right away. The divorce issue was temporarily forgotten. Sophie had never heard of the location the police mentioned. She quickly plugged the address into her GPS and sped off. When she arrived, she was met with a barren plot of land surrounded by trash, with no buildings in sight, except a few half-finished ones. The police were searching the area. This sight deeply wounded Sophie. Her mind raced with images from countless crime dramas, and she almost fainted from the shock. One of the officers helped her. Miss Ma, calm down. She barely held herself together. Where is he? Have you found him? She feared the worst, thinking Noah had taken his own life. In that moment, regret overwhelmed her. If she had known things would end like this, she wouldn't have called the police, claiming I was in danger. But I wasn't in danger. I had just left. Sophie's voice cracked. It's all my fault. He didn't disappear. He just doesn't want to deal with me anymore. It's my fault. She rambled, clearly in shock. The officer, still perplexed by her words, handed her a bag and said, "A mess, Ma. We didn't find Mr. Han's phone, but we found a SIM card. Could you check if it's his?" Sophie snapped back to reality. Is it just the SIM card? Where's the phone? The officer shook his head. We searched the area, but there's no sign of the phone. Emotionally drained, Sophie took the SIM card from the evidence bag, inserted it into her phone, and tried turning it on. Curious, she wondered what Noah had felt when he left her, and if any part of him was still holding on. The screen remained black, clearly out of battery. Sophie felt her resolve nearly snap, but kept herself together long enough to ask the police, "Could I borrow a charger? I'll charge it in my car and return it right away." The officer didn't question her further. After checking with his colleagues, he handed her a portable charger. See if this works. The SIM card had been exposed to water for a while. The wasteland was overgrown with weeds, and even though it was late autumn, dew still clung to the plants. Sophie refused to accept the phone was ruined. She prayed quietly as she charged it. Perhaps because her prayers were sincere, the screen flickered to life. The first thing she saw were missed calls, almost all from her. Then came a flood of unread messages from David. She always thought there was no connection between them, but here it was. David's tone in the messages was totally different from how he acted in front of her. The messages read, "Noah, you know Sophie well. She's sentimental and can't let go. As long as you're willing, she can follow you forever. But I think it's best we clear the air. Love doesn't have a ranking. If she had met me first, you two would just be old classmates. Men should know how to have fun in relationships. Being too honest just makes you boring to women. Youth may not be everything, but Sophie has high needs in that area, and I'm at the age to satisfy her better than you can. This is the necklace Sophie made for me and gave to me herself. Noah, you must understand. We truly love each other. If you agree, I'll leave the house to you as part of our breakup settlement because Sophie will give me a new one." There were many more messages like this. Short, crude, and filled with David's name, constantly referencing his age in relation to Sophie as some sort of justification. Sophie's face grew colder with each word, her heart sinking as she scrolled up. What she discovered made her blood run cold. David hadn't just sent messages, he had sent pictures. Photos of Sophie with gifts he had demanded, screenshots of her money transfers, 520, 1,314 amounts, and even intimate photos of her sleeping with him beside her. Sophie's stomach churned. She felt disgusted beyond words. The officer who lent her the charger saw the messages too, sneering at her with growing disdain. It was clear he was not just hoping to reconcile with Noah. He was trying to build a new life with someone else. Only Sophie seemed to believe that hiding it from Noah was proof of her love. She was trembling, unable to recognize herself in these images of betrayal. She took a deep breath and handed the portable charger back to the officer, her face empty of emotion. "I want to go home. Please continue searching for Noah." She couldn't bear to call him her husband in front of anyone anymore. On the drive back, she called David, her voice colder than ever. "Where are you? Come to my place. There's something we need to discuss in person." David was thrilled. "When?" "Right now," she replied. Sophie ended the call, drained and with no strength left to face any more of the mess she'd created. She had no intention of going to the place she had arranged with David. Just thinking about it made her want to puke. She hadn't had a sip of water since yesterday. However, David was faster. By the time she got home, he was already there, acting like the man of the house, barking orders at the servants without a care. "Take down those paintings. They're awful. If you're going to hang something, buy some expensive ones. Who wants these ugly things? Oh, and the carpet needs to be replaced. I'll give you the brand later. It has to be the most expensive custom-made one. I don't want my friends thinking I'm lying to them. Pull up the flowers outside too, and get me the most expensive ones." He was giving orders like a king, walking around with a sense of entitlement, pinching plants, and tossing leaves aside like it was nothing. Only when he saw Sophie did he stop. A grin spread across his face as he ran toward her, eager to please. "Where have you been? Have you figured out where you want to go to celebrate? I think we should stay here. After all, I'm the man of the house now. Right, by the way, where's the chef? I want to order some food." David had always seemed like an amusing distraction. A boyish figure who wasn't really bad, just a bit vain and spoiled. She never expected more from him and had enjoyed the adoration and youthful energy he provided. But now, standing before him, she realized how terribly wrong she had been. Her gaze turned icy as she asked, "What are you wearing?" David, completely absorbed in his fantasy of becoming the new master of the house, didn't notice anything off. He even twirled around, showing off the outfit he'd found in the closet. "What do you think? Does it look good on me? I looked around and this was the only thing that fit." Sophie's fury flared up instantly. "That's Noah's sleepwear. He's never worn it before." David completely misunderstood her intentions, grinning as he tried to embrace Sophie. "Isn't this more exciting, Sophie? What are you doing?" Before he could finish, Sophie had enough and ripped the sleepwear off him with force, leaving him stunned. She ignored his cries, only stopping once the garment hit the floor. She didn't look at him once during the whole scene. The servants, there just for their jobs, had no desire to witness such a spectacle. They quickly fled the room, heading straight for the yard. David was first startled, but when he realized no one else was around, he gave a smug smile. "Oh, so you want me again? I understand," he said, moving toward her to embrace her once more, not even trying to hide his intentions. Their relationship had always been about physical attraction, nothing deeper. He never felt the need for any sense of shame. As long as he could satisfy her desires, he could gain access to her wealth and status. Whether she saw him as a toy or a lover didn't matter, as long as he could secure the role of her partner and live in luxury. But Sophie's reaction was nothing like he expected. She pushed him away with disgust, her eyes blazing with fury. "You don't deserve to wear his clothes, and you certainly don't deserve to touch his things," she spat, making it clear she didn't want to be near him. David had thought that after moving into the house, marrying her would be inevitable. He had already begun to fantasize about becoming her husband and planned to pressure her into finalizing the divorce. He even changed into loose-fitting sleepwear, wearing nothing underneath. He grinned, thinking he was being clever. "You've always liked me this way, haven't you?" he said with a smirk, but his confidence faltered when Sophie grabbed his wrist, stopping him from picking up his discarded sleepwear. Her icy gaze met his as she demanded, "If you had any decency at all, you wouldn't have sent Noah those messages, nor would you have taken photos of us together. I've warned you before, don't flaunt yourself in front of him. You're the one who drove him away." She made sure to place all the blame on David, as if that would somehow lessen the hurt she'd caused Noah. The truth of her own actions, her own betrayal, was pushed aside as she blamed him entirely. David, realizing his secrets were out, quickly shifted into defense mode, pretending to be clueless. "What are you talking about? I've never sent Noah any messages or photos. I've been avoiding him." Did he find something out? It was a lie he knew would be hard to prove. He had no doubt that after finding out Sophie had been cheating, Noah would be done with the marriage. Sophie clenched her jaw, hissing, "You're still lying. Maybe I was blind before, thinking you were someone worth having, but you're nothing but trash. You really thought you could take his place." Her anger filled every word. For the first time, David saw Sophie looking at him with such venom. Instead of admitting fault, he crossed his arms defiantly. "It's definitely just him making up stories, trying to frame me." Sophie didn't let him escape this time. As he moved toward the stairs to change back into his clothes, she yanked him back forcefully. "What are you doing?" David gasped, panic rising in his voice. Without saying a word, Sophie pulled out Noah's phone, showing him the screen. There, clear as day, were the explicit photos and provocative messages he had sent to her. David's face went pale when he saw what she had, and he muttered, "Wasn't he supposed to talk to you about the divorce directly?" As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized his slip-up. He scrambled to cover it up, saying, "I didn't mean to lie. I was just trying to protect you. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't have risked everything." Sophie cut him off with a bitter laugh. "Is it really love? Or is it my identity and the Ma family's money you're after? You know the answer better than anyone." She regretted everything now. The decision to push Noah away for someone like David. Her anger was too much to bear, and she let it all out. David was still clinging to his fantasies, unwilling to let go of what he thought he had earned. He grasped her sleeve desperately, pleading, "Don't you see? I'm sincere. You know I've always been sincere." He continued, trying to justify his actions. "Do you really think Noah loved you? A man who loves you would get jealous, but he never cared. I was just trying to help you see the truth. That's why I sent those photos." "Shut up," Sophie interrupted, her voice cold and final. She was done with his excuses, done with the lies, and most of all, done with pretending that anything about her relationship with Noah had been more than a convenient distraction. Sophie spoke coldly. "You have no right to judge me. Besides, you probably wanted it to be exposed all along, didn't you? You took such clear pictures of me, but conveniently left yourself out of the frame. Don't think I don't know this was all part of your plan to pressure me into marriage." She was as clear-headed as ever, but it was too late now. David still wanted to argue, but Sophie was so disgusted by him that she didn't give him the chance. Without a second thought, She picked up her phone and called the villa's security team. "Take anyone who shouldn't be here out," she ordered. The security team, on call 24/7, arrived almost immediately upon receiving her command. David, unwilling to leave, struggled as he tried to reason with Sophie. "Sophie, you're the one who invited me here. If you want me to leave, I'll go right now, but you can't do this to me." Sophie turned her back on him and walked toward the house without looking back. "Don't let me see you again," she said coldly. David was dragged out of the villa. He watched helplessly as the ornate iron gate slammed shut in front of him, feeling his dreams of marrying into a rich family slipping away. Desperate, he started shouting in a near-tearful voice, "Sophie, even without me, Noah will divorce you sooner or later. This isn't my fault." He and Sophie shared an unspoken understanding. They both didn't want to take responsibility. It wasn't until he heard people on the street whispering about him that he realized the full extent of his humiliation. "What's with this guy? It's freezing cold, and he's running around with no shirt on. What's wrong with young people these days? It's disgraceful. Didn't you hear him? He said he's the reason for their divorce. Looks like he got kicked out after a fight with the wife. Wow, he looks so proper, but look at what he's doing. How shameless. Why not get a proper job? Why go around being a sugar baby?" The crowd had gathered to gossip, taking photos and videos, not caring if their footage got blocked on short video platforms. David had hoped for a quick rise to fame, but now he couldn't afford to have his reputation ruined. He covered his face with his hands, shouting towards the gate, "Sophie, Mrs. Ma, I'll leave right now, but at least give me a piece of clothing." The security guard, hearing the noise, returned to report to Sophie. "Mrs. Ma, Mr. E." He was cut off mid-sentence by Sophie's sharp command. "I don't want to hear about him again," she snapped, her voice dark with annoyance. Her mood was visibly soured, and the security guard wisely remained silent, not daring to provoke her further over a troublemaker who had caused chaos in her home. Outside, David was screaming in vain. Seeing Sophie's heartless rejection, he discarded his pitiful persona and started shouting insults like a common street thug. "You think I actually care about you? If you hadn't made it so easy, do you think I would have bothered with you? You'll regret this. Women are all the same, disloyal. You keep saying I'm your one true love, but you've been running around with other men behind my back, haven't you? Don't act all sentimental and fool yourself." He was no longer pretending to be anything other than the arrogant man he truly was. Curious bystanders, originally just drawn to the spectacle, stopped in their tracks to listen when they heard such explosive accusations. David, realizing how deeply he had embarrassed himself, reddened in the face, then, furious and humiliated, shouted, "What are you looking at? I'll call the police." It was a weekday, so the only people passing by were retirees or neighbors checking out the commotion. His usual intimidation tactics didn't work on them. Some of the bystanders, eager to get their say, responded immediately. "You think we want to see this? You're out here playing the sugar baby, ruining someone's marriage, and now you're getting kicked out like this. Just go home already. Why stay here making a fool of yourself?" Yeah, no self-respect at all. People should at least have some dignity. If he had any shame, he wouldn't be out here making a spectacle of himself like this. Shame was nothing but a useless concept to David. This was the second time in a single day he'd been publicly humiliated like this, and he was seething with anger. He tried to lash out at the people mocking him. "Who says I'm a sugar baby? Who?" One passerby laughed. "If you're not a sugar baby, then what are you? If she cared about you, would she let you walk around naked like this? Just a plaything. You really think you're something more? The houses around here are worth a lot of money. Guess you didn't get the money you hoped for. You're just losing everything." These last few words cut deep, and David's face turned an ashen gray. He had no more bravado left in him. He walked away in defeat as the jeering voices of the crowd echoed in his ears, feeling his dreams of grandeur shattered for good. A man who had recently divorced his unfaithful wife, filled with rage and resentment, stepped in front of David and shouted, "What's wrong with you? You're young. Why not do something decent instead of playing the homewrecker?" "Sugar baby, David?" Unwilling to back down, David retorted, "Look at you, old man. You're too much of a failure to even be a sugar baby yourself. Are you calling me one because you got cuckolded by your wife? And now you're bitter about it?" The man was furious. "I'd rather be a failure than be thrown out onto the streets, half naked like you. You're the real disgrace." The man reached out angrily to grab him. The situation quickly spiraled into chaos. The old man lived nearby and quickly gathered a group of neighbors to scold David as a shameless sugar baby. The onlookers who had been watching the drama got even more excited, calling their friends over to join the spectacle. Within moments, a crowd had gathered, watching the scene unfold. Inside the villa, Sophie heard the commotion but didn't even flinch. She was completely absorbed in her own world, unwilling to leave her sanctuary, no matter how much David yelled or tried to argue. He couldn't outshout the crowd, furious and humiliated. He tried to cover his face and slip away, but he was nearly molested by an older woman who reached out in the confusion. "Get off me, don't touch me," he yelled, shoving her away, realizing Sophie had completely turned her back on him. He shifted his attention to the other men in the crowd, desperate for any support. After all, someone who had lived off his looks and body couldn't even stand on his own feet. He convinced himself the men watching were all jealous of him. Wiping away his tears, he adopted a hurt expression and shouted, "Who will help me? I'll sleep with you, men or women, I don't care." A few older women in the crowd, intrigued by his offer, started to remove their coats, eager to help. But just as they took a step forward, their friends grabbed them back. "Don't even think about it. You're willing to take a man like that? He's young enough to use his body as a bargaining chip. He must not care about anything. He's just trash." Exactly. Maybe he was kicked out because the woman he was with caught something from him. Is he out for revenge? We should call the cops. This guy is trouble. The moment those words were spoken, whether out of genuine concern or just to escape the drama, the crowd scattered in all directions. Even the men who had been arguing with David quickly clapped their hands, trying to rid the air of any filth. David, who had often relied on his body to earn money, was now confronted with the reality that the people who once saw him as a prize were now avoiding him like the plague. The shame hit him like a ton of bricks. The iron gates of the villa were firmly shut, showing no signs of opening. In desperation, David hugged his arms around himself, panicked, and started running toward the nearest alley. Halfway down the street, a stray dog began barking and chasing him. Terrified, David bolted, darting through narrow alleyways to avoid the dog. By the time the barking faded, he was completely disoriented and unsure of where he was. He had lost his phone and jacket back at the villa. He couldn't even call for help, let alone figure out how to get back. The area was desolate, with only a few long-abandoned houses, untouched even by the homeless. He shivered in fear, his voice cracking as he shouted, "Help! Is anyone there?" But only the wind answered him. That night, David had no choice but to walk back home on foot, freezing and alone. If not for a kind passerby calling the police, he might have spent the entire night wandering aimlessly through the wilderness, still half naked. But this was just the beginning of his downfall. His dismissal letter arrived faster than he did, and soon he became a viral sensation on social media, his disgrace splashed all over the internet. His reputation was shattered beyond repair, and he would never show his face in public again. As for Sophie, she did exactly what she promised. After kicking David out of her home, she made sure to erase him completely from her life. That night, she sat on the couch, lost in her thoughts until someone reported to her, "Ma'am, we found a witness at the airport. They saw Mr. Han board a plane." Sophie froze. "I checked all the flight lists for that day. His name wasn't on any of them." "Ah, then the witness might have been mistaken. It could have been someone who looked like Mr. Han. This lead is probably useless. I'll look into other options." "Wait, come back. I don't want to miss anything. Which flight did the witness say he saw Noah aboard?" "It was probably the flight to Norway." Sophie immediately sprang into action, her eyes flashing with resolve. "Book me a flight to Norway right now." She grabbed her passport and rushed out the door without even changing her clothes, determined to follow the lead wherever it might take her. Sophie was frantic. However, Getting a visa and booking a flight wasn't something she could do on a whim. It wasn't until 3 days later that she finally stood on Norwegian soil. She contacted the embassy and local police to track down Noah's whereabouts. She knocked on the door of an apartment, calling his name as she barged in. The landlord, who was tidying the room, immediately blocked her way and suspiciously asked, "Who are you?" "I'm looking for Noah," she said, realizing she hadn't used his English name here. She quickly corrected herself. "He's my husband. We had some misunderstandings, and I need to talk to him." The landlord waved her off dismissively. "There's no one by that name here. He goes by Noah." "Please, check again," she insisted. The landlord remained firm. "My tenant's name is Liberty, not Noah. You've got the wrong place." Sophie stood there in confusion. "Are you sure? Could you be mistaken?" The landlord's patience was wearing thin. "If you don't believe me, then fine. I'm not going to argue about it." With that, she began to close the door. Sophie wasn't ready to let this lead slip away. She pulled out some money and asked, "Could you at least tell me when he moved in, or if he's had any visitors during his stay?" The landlord accepted the money, but remained tight-lipped. "I can't tell you anything else. Nothing." Sophie was left empty-handed. Her spirits, already low, sank even further. The despair in her voice was palpable as she realized Noah had vanished without a trace. She had no more leads, no more hope. With nothing left to cling to, she returned to her country. From that day on, she stopped going to the office, locking herself away in her home. Her assistant called to report work updates, but she immediately cut him off. "Any news on Noah?" "No. There's no news yet. We've put out missing person notices, but no leads for now." The assistant followed Sophie's instructions, but his efforts came to nothing. When he reported back, she responded with eerie calmness. "I understand," she said simply, ending the call without further words. Over the next few days, the assistant called regularly to provide updates, but her responses grew shorter and shorter. At first, she acknowledged and asked for further action. Later, she only muttered an indifferent in reply. The assistant began to feel uneasy. He feared Sophie might have suffered a breakdown and was planning to isolate herself completely. He quickly contacted her parents for help. Sophie's parents, upon hearing something was wrong with their daughter, rushed to her home. The servants were still following the routines Noah had set up before he left. Everything in the house was orderly, except for the absence of its owner. Sophie's mother, clearly anxious, stopped one of the servants and asked, "Where's my daughter? Why hasn't she come out?" Normally, Sophie would have greeted you warmly, but today she hasn't even bothered to make an appearance. "We called her in advance, but she didn't answer any of our calls." The servant pointed upstairs, her face grave. "Miss Sophie has locked herself in her bedroom. She told us not to disturb her." Her mother's worry deepened. "Has she left the room at all?" The servant shook her head. "No, she hasn't." "What about meals? Did you bring her anything?" her father asked. Growing more concerned, the servant hesitated, her voice tinged with frustration. "She won't eat or drink anything. We can't force her. Anyone who knocks on the door gets scolded." Her father and mother exchanged a troubled look. They now realized something was terribly wrong. Sophie had been living in isolation. Her bedroom door wasn't locked from the inside, so her parents knocked for a long time, but there was no answer. Growing increasingly worried, they decided to push open the door. What they saw stunned them. The floor was covered with crumpled sheets of paper, almost no space left to stand. Sophie was sitting on the floor, head down, scribbling furiously in a notebook. Despite the bright sunlight streaming in, her presence cast an eerie, oppressive shadow over the room. Her father bent down to pick up a few sheets of paper. His eyes widened as he read the same phrase over and over again. "I was wrong." Her mother's heart skipped a beat. She hurried over to Sophie's side, but the sight of her daughter, eyes red and trembling hands clutching the pen, made her want to cry. The words Sophie was writing were like a cry for help. "What are you doing, Sophie?" she asked, her voice breaking. "It's all my fault. I betrayed Noah. I couldn't resist the temptation. And now I've lost him. I'll finish writing all of this and show him how sorry I am." Her parents were left speechless, heartbroken, and helpless as they watched their daughter continue to write her apology in vain, trapped in a cycle of regret and self-punishment. The papers scattered on the floor were made of the same material as the ones Noah had left for her. Sophie had taken the notebook he hadn't finished using from the study and moved it to her bedroom. She spent days and nights writing nonstop for several days straight. Time seemed to lose all meaning. Her mother's eyes filled with tears as she implored, "Noah doesn't want to see you. Even if you fill the entire room with apology letters, what good will it do? You should say these words to him directly." Sophie paused and thought for a moment, acknowledging her mother's point, but she was already trapped in her own thoughts, unable to escape. She lifted her bloodshot eyes and insisted, "He will know. Once I finish writing all of this, he will forgive me. He will understand my sincerity." Her voice was hoarse, but there was an unusual fervor in her tone, and her eyes gleamed with unsettling intensity. Mid-sentence, she suddenly grabbed the notebook back, her trembling hands continuing to scribble on the pages as she muttered to herself, "I was wrong. You will forgive me, won't you? Once I fill all these pages, you will come back and you will forgive me. I'm so sorry." Sophie repeated these words endlessly. Her mother, seeing her daughter descending into madness, helplessly begged, "Please, I'm begging you, stop writing and not eating or drinking. If you keep this up, you'll die." But no matter how much she pleaded, Sophie remained unmoved. She tried to take the notebook away, but her strength wasn't enough to stop her daughter. In the end, her father, unable to watch any longer, came up with an idea. "You want to apologize to Noah, right? You need to let him know how you feel. There's a missing persons show running right now. You should sign up and apologize to him on camera in front of the audience." The show was gaining popularity, and with Sophie's status as a talented young woman, it would definitely attract attention. Maybe Noah would see her confession somewhere in the world. Sophie immediately signed up, and with additional funding, she secured a spot on the latest episode. The production team, sensing the gossip potential from her marital issues, ramped up their promotional efforts. By the time the episode aired, it was already generating buzz. Sophie didn't bother to hide her emotions, but for the sake of the show, she made an effort to freshen up and put herself together. Before she left, she even wore the first dress Noah had bought her after their marriage. Back then, their relationship was strong. Every day before leaving the house, they'd exchange a good morning kiss in their embrace. But as time passed, those beautiful moments had been shattered by her own actions. The studio audience was packed, all there to witness this scandalous event. The host, sensing Sophie's exhaustion, subtly probed for the cause of her marital breakdown. But to his surprise, she was direct and open from the start, confessing everything. She said, "I came here to apologize to my husband. I broke my promise. When we were together, I told him many sweet things, believing we'd grow old together, our love never fading. But I couldn't resist temptation and made a mistake. As for our marriage, all the blame lies with me. I cheated first, and that's why he left. Today, I'm sitting here just hoping that he'll give me a chance to ask for his forgiveness." Sophie spoke with genuine remorse, clearly explaining her feelings toward Noah. By the end of her confession, she was nearly choking on her tears. The production team, eager to capitalize on the drama, promoted the video widely. It quickly spread across the internet, sparking discussions on various forums. Some netizens even tracked down Noah's past artwork and uncovered David's identity, the third party. But despite the flurry of voices, none of the information related to Noah surfaced. Sophie waited for several days, and when nothing came through, she forced herself to call her assistant. "I remember there's a video section on the company's official website. Can you upload my apology video there? No time limit, keep it up until we hear from Noah." This was essentially public humiliation, not just for her, but for the company as well. The assistant hesitated, feeling it was too much, but didn't dare argue. He only asked, "Should we put it on the main site or the branch office site, both?" Sophie replied coldly, unsatisfied. Also, buy ad space on social media. I want this on the front page, domestic and international. Anyone who has information about him can contact me and put my personal number on there too. What started as a typical missing persons notice had turned into a media sensation because of Noah's identity and the story behind it. Sophie believed that by taking this step, even if Noah saw her looking so tired and worn out on the program, he would choose to call her and talk things through. But he never contacted her. So, even though she kept her phone on 24/7 with the volume at its highest, Noah never reached out. A few days later, the first call from an unknown number arrived. The voice on the other end asked, "Is the reward for the lead on the missing persons notice still up for grabs?" "Of course," Sophie responded quickly. The caller said, "All right, then send me 100,000 and I'll tell you where I saw him yesterday." "You saw him yesterday?" Sophie asked, her voice shaking with hope. "Yes, now send the money," came the reply. Without hesitation, Sophie transferred the money. Sophie's sanity had long been crushed by boundless despair. Only when the mysterious caller vaguely gave her an address in China did she bitterly hang up the phone with a forced smile. It wasn't surprising the person had lied to her, but she didn't pursue it. She simply didn't have the energy left to care. After that day, similar calls came non-stop. Every caller claimed they had seen Noah somewhere and demanded varying amounts of money for information. Sophie knew many were just scammers, but she still sent money to each of them, desperately clinging to the faintest hope that one might be telling the truth. But the so-called rewards were swallowed up by the void, not even causing a ripple. Sophie didn't care. The hope, however small, was all that kept her going. Even when some callers insisted on face-to-face meetings, she would still go. Driven by the smallest shred of hope, some men reached out to her, but they were nothing more than opportunistic parasites. "Miss Ma, I've got a lot of guys on standby. If you're lonely, we can all keep you company." These were the men who peddled their bodies for a living. Sophie immediately dismissed them with one word: get lost. After that, even the people trying to deceive her stopped calling. Her phone lay silent all day, quieter than she was. A month passed like this, but then something happened at home. One afternoon, the maid, who had been knocking on Sophie's door for some time without getting a response, grew concerned. There was no sound of her telling them not to bother her anymore. Cautiously, she pushed open the door to check. What she saw made her heart stop. Sophie was unconscious, lying on the carpet, barely breathing. It was critical, and the maid immediately called an ambulance. Sophie's parents arrived at the hospital in shock, looking far older than they had just a month ago. They anxiously waited outside the emergency room, appearing like they might collapse any moment. But the doctor brought more bad news. The patient's fainting was caused by dehydration and malnutrition. Moreover, she miscarried. This is a case of severe mental illness, and if she doesn't get treatment soon, there's a high chance she may even attempt suicide. Sophie's mother fainted on the spot upon hearing this. Her father, though on the brink of collapse himself, had to force himself to sign the necessary paperwork and pay for the treatment. Only after they had stabilized could he record a new video at Sophie's hospital bedside. In the video, he appeared frail and tearful, pleading with Noah, hoping he would return and save Sophie's life for the sake of the past, on the other side of the world. Noah knew nothing of this. He had resolved to sever all ties with the past, including not getting involved in anything related to Sophie or the company. In the forests of Norway, there was a small wooden cabin. During the cold winter months, the town's residents mostly stayed home, enjoying the snow and resting. Noah, too, followed the local custom and chose to do the same. He set up his easel by the window and painted the snowy landscape outside. From time to time, he sipped the hot coffee he'd ground himself, while a newly adopted kitten curled up at his feet. The kitten, very affectionate and eager for attention, would meow and jump onto his lap, demanding to be petted. Just then, there was a knock at the door. He had no choice but to pick up the kitten and go open the door. It was Lisa, the landlord, who had come to visit. He stepped aside to let her in. The little one insisted on cuddling, so he had to bring him along. "It's no problem. He's so adorable," Lisa said, shaking a bag she was carrying. "I baked some cookies and wanted to share them with you." "Thank you," he smiled, pouring her a cup of coffee. In this small town with its simple folk, winter life was a bit dull, and visiting neighbors was a common pastime. Within just a month, Lisa and Noah had become quite good friends during their conversations. Lisa mentioned something that caught Noah's attention. She said, "Liberty, I saw a video on social media. It's an apology video from a woman who posted a missing persons notice with a photo that looks a lot like you, along with her contact information. I was curious if you've seen it. The woman in the video looked more and more like me." But Lisa, remembering that Noah rarely used social media since coming here, was worried there might be more to the story. So she phrased her question gently. I laughed. "Really? What a coincidence. But my appearance is quite common where I'm from, so it's not surprising if someone else looks like me." This was Noah's way of denying it. Lisa looked at his distinctly foreign face and immediately understood his meaning. But instead of confronting him directly, she simply changed the subject. "It's not just the woman. Her parents also posted a video saying that she's been going through a really tough time. She lost the child, and she's in very bad shape. They said she might die soon." I have to admit, Sophie's performance in the Giza video was quite compelling. Even someone who doesn't understand the language could feel her despair through her expressions and the subtitles, Noah said, holding the kitten in his arms, his eyelashes lowered as he spoke. "Everyone is an independent individual. No one is meant to live depending on someone else. If she's going to give up on herself over this, then there's nothing I can do. I can't sacrifice others to fulfill her. My decision was final. Even if Sophie herself stood in front of me, crying and begging, I would never turn back." Lisa smiled and said, "That's good. Don't worry, you're safe here. The snowstorm in the forest is so heavy that the roads to the nearby city are temporarily blocked. Even if someone mistakenly thinks you're the woman in the video, they won't be able to contact her and cause any confusion." A warm feeling rose in Noah's chest as he tasted a freshly baked cookie. With a red rim around his eyes, he said, "Thank you. These cookies are really delicious." Time flowed like water. Before long, it was the night before Christmas, a big day for the town's residents. Many young people working in other cities made the effort to come back and reunite with their families. Noah was alone in the cabin, but he had bought some fresh flowers and hung up a recently completed painting on the wall, trying to prepare for the holiday spirit. Lisa, being thoughtful, invited him over. "By the way, Liberty, my sister Anna is coming home tonight. It'll just be the two of us, and it'll be a bit lonely. Would you like to come over and spend Christmas with us?" Since there were no other plans and he didn't see a reason to refuse, Noah picked out a few flowers, grabbed the kitten, and brought a pot of hot coffee as he headed over to Lisa's place. Lisa lived alone and was quite happy to have someone her age to keep her company. She looked around at the decorations scattered throughout the house and, with a slightly embarrassed smile, said, "All these decorations are from Anna. She said she'd help me set up when she came home, but it seems like it's just us now." The Christmas tree was nearly 2 meters tall, standing beautifully beside the fireplace. But putting the star on top was a challenge. Noah shrugged and said, "No worries, just give me a chair and a stool. I'll do it." Being taller than Lisa, he stood on the stacked stools, tiptoeing just enough to reach the top of the tree. Together, they quickly decorated it. The tree looked festive and cheerful. Lisa sighed and muttered, "I really don't know what's going on with Anna. First, she forgets the string lights. Then she's been gone so long without bringing anything back. I just hope she's not lost somewhere." Noah glanced at the clock and said seriously, "It's still early. She can make it back in time for the turkey." Oh my God, the turkey. Lisa suddenly realized the turkey was still cooking in the oven and rushed to the kitchen. It looked like she had her hands full. Noah chuckled softly and continued hanging decorations on the tree. When he heard the doorbell ring, he went over to open it. Standing at the door was a cute young girl who had mistaken him for Lisa. She cheerfully held up a string of lights and said, "I brought the lights." Her words froze as she realized she was speaking to a stranger. Their eyes met, Noah wasn't bothered and smiled as he explained, "You must be Anna." "Right, I'm your sister Lisa's tenant. She's in the kitchen preparing the turkey. She'll be out soon." Lisa, who had been watching, brightened and remained silent for a moment until she finally called out from the kitchen, "What are you standing there for? Come help me with the turkey." Anna seemed to snap out of her daze, like a kitten caught off guard. She quickly walked into the kitchen with the string lights, and after some prompting from her sister, she returned and handed them to Noah. But the whole time, Anna didn't dare look him in the eye again. Her fair skin flushed noticeably red. On Christmas night, the three of them sat around the Christmas tree, sharing turkey and Christmas cookies. When it came time to exchange gifts, Anna finally gathered the courage to meet Noah's eyes. With sincere blue eyes, she asked, "Would you be my boyfriend?" There were no embellishments or clever words, just the simplest confession. Noah pushed the Christmas gift he had prepared for the two sisters toward them and said, "I'm sorry, but I think I'm going to leave here soon." "Where are you going?" Anna asked, her eyes wide. Noah replied, "To somewhere far away.